Chapter 8:16. Revenge for having killed his wife, the sublime paragon's inheritance. This is the sublime paragon's legacy of his divine essence. This is the foreign land. So this is what actually lies in the foreign lands. As the old man cried out in surprise, he suddenly started laughing loudly. Exhilaration and excitement appeared in his eyes. He had come into Western Ring Nebula's foreign land for freedom, to capture Su Ming alive. However, he did not expect that the foreign land was actually something like this. To him, the chance to receive this legacy was something that he desired even more than freedom. Yet at the moment his laughter echoed in the air, cracks immediately appeared on one of the 100,000 stone monuments. Blood gushed out from those cracks, and wretched cries came out from the stone monument, and it was the usual voice of a person longing for life. Su Ming looked swiftly at the stone monument from which the wretched were coming. Once he clearly saw which one it was, he was momentarily taken aback, then he instinctively cast his gaze at the man he'd seen before. He was trembling at that moment, his hands tightly clasped on his legs. His eyes were red and tears were falling down his cheeks, turning into voiceless weeps. The stone monument from which the longing for life cries came from was precisely the one with Sai Ma Yu's name carved on it. It was the monument that was right beside the man and was only 200,000 feet tall. He watched as more cracks appeared on that stone monument, watched as more blood poured out from it, as his tears fell harder and harder. "Take care." A frail feminine voice spoke lightly from within the stone monument. That voice was incredibly weak, and the old man that was laughing long and hard in the distance could not hear it. Even Su Ming could only hear it faintly. The only one who could truly hear it clearly was the man. That voice belonged to Sai Ma Yu. She did not know whether the man waiting for her was still alive, but she knew that no matter whether he could hear it or not, this was farewell. Her voice gradually faded away. Light then spread out, wiping her name away, and disappeared from that 200,000 feet tall stone monument. Eventually, the stone monument went down in size. When Su Ming saw this scene, his heart trembled. During the instant just then, at the moment the old man appeared and his laughter echoed in the air, Su Ming had felt a chilling was spreading out and covering him and his stone monument. Once it swept past him, it gathered on Sai Ma Yu. Su Ming could well imagine that if that chilling presence had gathered on him, then the one who would have ended up dead would have been him. Ha ha! So this is my stone monument, hem? As the old man laughed, he jumped up and appeared before his stone monument. Then, his pupils suddenly narrowed. Clearly, in his exhilaration and excitement, he hadn't noticed that there were other people beside him in the area. His gaze first fell on the man, but when he looked over, the man's tears had already disappeared. His bloodshot eyes had fallen shut, and not a single hint of his emotions could be seen. When the old man looked at his surroundings incredulously, a brilliant flash suddenly appeared in his eyes and he stared fixedly at Su Ming, who was sitting in the distance. The sparkle in his eyes grew even brighter, and a hint of greed appeared within them. "Mo Su!" The old man laughed long and hard, and his power abruptly spread out. A thick presence of world-plane realm burst forth from his body with a bang. His level of cultivation was the same as Zhao family's progenitor. He had also reached the peak in the middle stage of world-plane realm. But he did not immediately attack. He was not a fool, since he was able to survive in the barren lands of divine essence up till now and had reached this level of cultivation. In fact, it could even be said that he was a cunning old fox. In this foreign and strange land, he was not certain whether there was a limitation that prevented fighting and killing. That was why he only had his power erupt forth from his body, but did not move forward. Instead, he stared at Su Ming. After all, Su Ming came to this place earlier than he did, and thus definitely knew much more than him. Based on Su Ming's instinctive reactions, he could be able to discover many things. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He had guessed long ago that the old man was definitely one of those that came after his life, since he had come to this place after him. He immediately stood up, intending to push his hand on the stone monument to fuse with it and receive the test of the legacy, which could allow him to avoid being killed by the old man, but a thought suddenly appeared in his heart, and he did not choose to do so. Instead, he took a few steps backwards with a grim and wary expression on his face. He had chosen not to fuse with the stone monument because of the man. That man might look calm right now, but Su Ming would never forget the gentle look in his eyes when he looked towards Sima Yu's stone monument. He would not forget the tears falling from his eyes when the stone monument cracked and blood poured out from it. And even less could he forget the 2 words that came from Sima Yu's stone monument. If it were anyone else, they would have definitely attacked and killed this old man, but not only did this man not attack, he hid his tears away and covered his red eyes. Something's wrong here. Could it be that you can't attack each other here? Su Ming narrowed his eyes while on guard. He was certain that the old man had not left his name on the stone monument, which was why he did not know that Su Ming could fuse with it once he just placed his hand on it. All of this thinking might have seemed to have taken a lot of time, but in reality, this lasted only for a brief moment. Su Ming swiftly showed panic on his face, and as his expression changed drastically, he charged backwards. Su Ming's expression, his act of retreating, and that look of panic were all seen clearly by the old man. When he took note of his swift retreat and looked to be about to escape, some of the old man's doubts faded away, but he still remained cautious. Before he knew clearly whether he could kill others in this place, he would not attack easily. When he took a step forward and killing intent shone in his eyes, looking as if he was about to attack, he kept the man in his peripheral vision. Perhaps he would be able to see some clues from that man. Yet at the instant he swept his gaze towards the man, the other opened his eyes. They were no longer bloodshot, but calm, with a hint of obstinance and unruliness in them. If you want to kill someone, go do so by the side. Don't bother me while I train. Get lost. The man let out a cold harumph. When he spoke, he lifted his right hand and swung his arm at the old man. With it, a vast power of world planes erupted forth with a bang from his body. As he swung his arm, the man's power in the later stage of world plane realm instantly turned into a gust of violent wind that charged towards the old man. The wind traveled incredibly quickly. If the old man did not dodge, even if he did not die, he would be injured badly. This was the difference between the peak of those in the middle stage and those in the later stage of world plane realm. There was no way he would be able to withstand it. The old man's expression changed drastically. He had long since noticed that the man's power ran so deep that he could not tell what level of cultivation he possessed. By his guesses, the man should be at the later stage of world plane realm. But since he had been hesitant about whether he could attack, that was why he had decided to use himself to test this. But he did not expect that the man would be so unruly as to attack. By the looks of it, it was clear that if he had been just slightly slower, he would have been wounded heavily. Besides, when the man attacked, the old man could tell that he was absolutely not faking it, but the old man still forced his body to stop evading and made himself freeze for a moment on the spot. He fixed his gaze on the man. He wanted to test one more time whether this person was truly attacking him or just faking it. When he saw that the violent gust of wind had closed in and the destructive power came crashing towards him with a bang, about to ram into him, he took note that the man still looked as he did before, cold, indifferent, and with an air of unruliness about him. You can kill here. The old man's expression changed. There was no longer any doubt in his heart. Almost at the instant that destructive gust of wind arrived, he retreated and brought out a jade slip. Right at the moment the gust of wind almost touched him, he crushed the jade slip. Once it shattered, the old man disappeared. When the gust of wind charged past, he appeared thousands of feet away, not too far from Su Ming. This person is incredibly powerful. I can't provoke him. Besides, he might not know that I have a jade slip that allows me to shift and avoid being locked by world paragons in the later stage of world plane realm. Then, Mo Su, you can't escape. The old man turned around swiftly and locked his gaze on Su Ming, who was swiftly running away. As the old man laughed ferociously, his power in world plane realm erupted and spread out. He lifted his right hand and let out a low shout, and an endless number of runic symbols instantly appeared out of nowhere. They gathered in midair and formed a horsetail whisk. As it swept through the air, it instantly appeared in front of Su Ming and flung itself fiercely in his direction. Su Ming paused in his footsteps and turned around swiftly. He did not dodge, but stared at the old man. In fact, he simply let that horsetail whisk close in. He was confident that this strike could injure him, but not heavily so. With him being heavily injured as the bet, he gambled on the mystery of the land. When Su Ming thought of the things he had analyzed previously, he was certain by 8/10 he would win. The man's attack just now had especially made Su Ming certain of his actions. His actions aren't fake. The red and grief in his eyes are incredibly real. This person trembling when that voice told him to take care also explain everything. He might look as if he was attacking, but in truth, I'm certain that this person went to seek death. He will either be successful in his revenge, or he will die. He is using his eventual death as a price to make the old man believe that you can attack in this place. Su Ming stopped moving. The horsetail whisk arrived in an instant. This scene made a glint appear in the man's eyes and the old man's expression to change. Within an instant, the horsetail whisk touched Su Ming's body. He was prepared to be heavily wounded, but when it touched him, it disappeared without a trace, as if it had never existed. This scene caused the old man's expression change drastically, and fear appeared on his face. He knew that he had fallen into a trap, but before shock could register in his heart, a chilling will immediately swept past his body. Then, without any sound, his body instantly disintegrated into ashes. He died. His body and soul were destroyed. The entire area was in dead silence. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. His expression was as calm as usual. He walked slowly towards his stone monument and sat down cross-legged once again. His gaze fell on that man, who also looked at him at that moment. Their gazes met in mid-air. After some time, the man said softly, "Thank you." "You're welcome," Su Ming replied lightly. The man fell silent. He no longer looked at Su Ming, but instead looked at the stone monument that had once belonged to Sima Yu. Tears fell from his eyes once more, and the grief on his face was incredibly great. It was as if he saw how he and Sima Yu had come to this place many years ago and what had happened after that. She was his everything, and he was also her everything. Yet now, he was the only one left. "I will never owe anyone any debt of kindness. You are a newcomer as well, so you definitely have questions. Ask away. I will tell you all that I know and experienced. Think of it as me repaying you for helping me take revenge on that man for killing my wife just now," Jukang said lightly. Chapter 8:17. 5 Echelon. Su Ming's face turned stern as he looked at Jukang. He had helped him not just because he had wanted to test the mysteries of this place, but more importantly because he wanted to obtain some information about this place from Jukang. This sort of thing was incredibly useful to him. At the very least, it would help him to walk fewer circles, and that would mean that he would be making his stone monument grow to 1,000,000 feet at the fastest speed possible, being able to move before the others. However, unless there was some sort of unique situation, no one would be willing to tell another this sort of information based on personal experience. After all, if someone else succeeded, it would mean that their chances of dying would increase. This divine essence's legacy was in truth a competition. No one would tell someone completely unrelated to them their experiences and let that person gradually walk ahead of themselves. More importantly, those experiences could be said to have been bought with an endless amount of time. They were what the people here have obtained after making numerous circles and walking into various dead ends. The value of these experiences was, in a way, incredibly valuable. Su Ming needed this knowledge because he clearly knew that if one person had appeared in the foreign land to come after his life, then the forces of power from the 4 great true worlds keeping a lookout over the barren lands of divine essence must have certainly increased his bounty. While he did not know what sort of reward was offered this time, it was clearly enough for a person to dare to enter the foreign land at the risk of their life. And if a single person was willing to come here, then it meant that the reward by the 4 great true worlds would definitely bring more people, and as more and more of them entered, the shadow of death would fall on Su Ming's head again and again. If a person comes, then the possibility of me dying will be 1 out of 100,000. If 100,000 come, I might not certainly die. After all, every single time the selection comes, it will choose between 100,000 people, and since it doesn't have any sort of pattern, even those who had just obtained their stone monuments might be chosen. But by that time the threat of death will reach an incredibly terrifying rate. The only way out of this is to use the shortest amount of time possible to make my stone monument 1,000,000 feet tall. Only by doing so will I have the greatest possibility of avoiding being selected. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath. He knew that he had made the right bet. With his actions, he would show his sincerity in order to obtain Jukang's experience. This was a trade. What are the details of the inheritances test in this place? How can I make my stone monument reach 1 million feet tall at the shortest amount of time possible? Su Ming asked languidly, his voice relaxed, not showing a single hint of his thoughts and emotions. Zhu Kang did not speak right away. He only looked at the stone monument that had once belonged to Sai Ma Yu. After a long while, as if he was mumbling to himself, he softly spoke up. 3,000 years ago, I was just a cultivator in the middle stage of World Plane Realm. Since her father entered a foreign land and never came out, that's why I accompanied her to this place. In the blink of an eye, 3,000 years passed. During this time, we were constantly struggling here. But it wasn't for that stupid inheritance. Those who obtain the divine essence can become a sublime paragon, but I don't care about that. I only wanted to get out of this place alive with her. We worked hard continuously. My wife, her potential was far greater than mine, but in this place, potential is meaningless. Over the period of 3,000 years, she had only managed to make her stone monument reach 200,000 feet. I didn't want her to be alone in this place, hence I gave up 3 chances of making my stone monument reach 1 million feet, so that I could be with her. Because even if I managed to make my monument reach 1 million feet, if I was the only who managed to get out, what use would there be even if I was given 1,000 years of freedom? It'd be completely useless. I gave up those 3 chances and stayed here with her instead. Zhu Kang did not answer Su Ming's question, but continued mumbling to himself. Su Ming listened to him and did not interrupt. He could feel that Zhu Kang's love for Sai Ma Yu had already surpassed the love for his own life. He was also shocked that Zhu Kang had 3 chances of making his stone monument reach 1 million feet, and it had only been 3,000 years since he started. Was more intelligent than I am, and she had greater knowledge than me regarding this place. During the first 500 years, we examined our experiences within each of our worlds in the stone monument. Each of us gradually figured out the things that all the seniors of this place valued like treasure and spoke not a word of. They all delighted in watching those who came later to tread the long and winding paths they had taken themselves in the past. We discovered that what we experienced in our worlds was different, but the answer we obtained in the end was the same. This so-called divine essence inheritance is in truth divided into 10 stages due to a person's body. Zhu Kang mumbled softly, and Su Ming immediately began listening even more attentively. And I weren't clear what divine essence was. We only knew that it could grant a person the possibility to become a sublime paragon. The eyes, nose, mouth, ears, and heart are the 5 illusory echelons. The limbs and torso are known as the 5 corporeal echelons. When you add all of them together, you will have the complete 10 stages. With the completion of each echelon, you will be able to make your stone monument grow to 1 million feet. Zhu Kang's voice echoed in the air. When it fell into Su Ming's ears, his heart trembled. Almost all those who come here will receive a vague notice that they need to use their hands to touch the stone monument. Only then can they activate the training from the legacy. And I started like this as well. It was only 500 years later that we noticed something off, but it was already too late. We could no longer turn back and could only continue moving down that path. Because we used our hands to touch the stone monument, that's why the first 5 echelon path we chose became the 5 corporeal echelons. We used our right hand to touch the stone monument, that's why the first thing we had to train was our body's right hand, then it would be our left hand, and then it would be our entire body. Only once we did that would our stone monument reach 5 million feet. But our guess was that the people who came here didn't necessarily need to first tread the 5 corporeal echelons, because this path was too hard. It did not contain any form of consciousness, and we could only use our bodies to feel our way through. The difficulty of this path is something those who have not experienced it do not understand. It's different for the 5 illusory echelons. They need understanding and a form of epiphany. It might seem even harder compared to the other path, but in truth, if you want to receive a great serendipity, then you must first walk down the path of 5 illusory echelons. After that, you will possess a conscious will of things, and you'll move faster down your path. Zhu Kang's words caused Su Ming's pupils to constrict, and he suddenly said, "Senior Zhu Kang, do you mean that if my body first touches the stone monument, then it will be the first to receive the refinement of divine essence?" It'll have to get used to this divine essence, or at least come to remember it. Then with the body as foundation, I will have to slowly understand the 5 illusory echelons, and from then, eventually make my stone monument reach 10 million feet. And if I don't take this path, I'll be using my consciousness and my soul to get used to the divine essence first. And once I remember that feeling, it'll have to spread to my entire body. This makes it 2 different paths. In one, a person trains from the outside of their bodies to the internal parts, and the other one is where they train from the internal parts to the external ones. Zhu Kang fell silent. After a moment, he averted his gaze from the stone monument that once belonged to Sima Yu and moved it to Su Ming. This was the guess of my wife and me, and it remained so until 2,000 years ago. At that time, a person sat down before his stone monument and meditated for 300 years. Then with his own comprehensive abilities, he understood this. His name is Xianxia. Right now, his stone monument has reached 2 million feet. Don't use your body to touch the stone monument. Use your eyes, nose, ears, mouth, and heart to form a faint connection with it. This will make you move in fewer circles, and it will also make your chance of success greater. You might not be very quick, and there is even a possibility that you will be slow, but based on our observations, there were quite a few people who had arrived during these 2,000-something years, and there were quite a few of them who made their stone monuments reach 1 million feet. During this, it is only natural that some people died, but Xianxia is still around. That's why Yue believed that those who walk down the path of 5 illusory echelons will have a much lower possibility of death compared to other people. This is only a guess, because only a short time has passed and those who train in the path of 5 illusory echelons are too few in number, so we couldn't contain too much proof. You can choose to believe me or not, Zhu Kang said calmly. His voice echoed in the area. This is what we experienced. Also, no matter what sort of method you use to touch the stone monument, you will still need to fuse with the world there. That is an illusory world, in which everyone's experiences are different. It's born based on your memories. In fact, some of the memories that even you don't know of will be revealed. Based on what I experienced, if you fix your mind on a certain period of time the moment you begin to fuse with the monument, then there will be a high possibility to see the world that belongs to that time. Nostalgia appeared in Zhu Kang's eyes at those words. He lifted his right hand and slowly pressed it against the stone monument. Su Ming might not know the details of the things the man saw, but he could guess that here was definitely a woman in those memories, and her name was Sima Yu. All of these are my experiences. I've told you everything. You, take care of yourself. As Zhu Kang spoke softly, his body gradually faded away, and a vortex appeared on his stone monument. A hand suddenly reached out from there and grabbed Zhu Kang's right hand, yanking him inside. The last thing is a guess Yue made 400 years ago. Perhaps it's also the reason for her death. She told me that she suspected that the foreign land was a great scam. Zhu Kang disappeared, but his voice still reverberated in the air. Su Ming sat there with a dumbfounded expression. He looked at Zhu Kang's stone monument, and after a long moment, he sucked in a deep breath. The area returned to silence. However, Zhu Kang's voice still echoed in Su Ming's head. A long while later, a brilliant light shone in his eyes, and his gaze slowly landed on his stone monument, which was right before him. This stone monument was only 20,000 feet tall. Compared to the others, it was really insignificant. No matter what, I still have to walk down this path. I can't believe Zhu Kang's words completely, but there should be some truth to them. 5 illusory echelons, huh? Su Ming did not choose to use his hands to touch the monument. Instead, he just sat there and stared at it. Aside from using his eyes to look, his heart did not think, his body did not move. All his sensory organs besides his eyes did not do anything. If it's the 5 illusory echelon, then I will start with my eyes. Su Ming sat down and meditated quietly. Time passed slowly. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. In the blink of an eye, another month passed by. During it, Su Ming rarely blinked. He just stared at the stone monument. His entire mind and body were focused on that sight, and he ignored everything else around him. When he even forgot about time, he saw a vortex appear on the stone monument. He saw a great suction force within it, and once it sucked in his gaze, an eye appeared within the vortex. The moment this eye looked at Su Ming, his body became indistinct. Time: after I became the god of berserkers. Location: 9th summit, when morning Dao Sex Dao Yuan arrived. At the instant Su Ming became indistinct, a blood-curdling murderous intent appeared in his eyes. As his voice echoed in the air, he disappeared. Chapter 8:18. The teardrop all those years ago. That teardrop all those years ago. Su Ming wanted to kill Dao Yuan, wanted to kill all 5 of those Dao slaves, and wanted to kill all the guards Dao Yuan had summoned later on. He wanted to kill everything, even if it was just an illusion. He wanted to let his current powerful self return to the past. Boom! A loud bang rang out in Su Ming's heart. He felt as if his body was about to be torn apart, and an intense pain traveled through his entire body, something which he had not experienced for a long time. That's not right. I've already lost my sense of pain. The intense pain made Su Ming's heart tremble, and he tried to open his eyes. But he could not do so. The intense pain in his body gradually disappeared, but Su Ming did not know where he was. He could not open his eyes. It was as if his body did not belong to him. He could not control it. What's going on? Just in which timeline was I thrown? Su Ming could sense that the intense pain in his body was rapidly fading away. After a moment, when the pain vanished, he tried opening his eyes again, but he still could not do so, as if he did not possess the strength to do so. He could sense that his cultivation base was still around, his Artman was also with him, but it could not leave his body, as if it had been restricted and could not spread out. But this was not the most important thing. The main point was that once the intense pain disappeared, Su Ming sensed warmth. It did not come from the body, but from the heart. It came from his soul, and that sort of warmth was unfamiliar to him, because there was a hint of grief in that unfamiliarity. In fact, not even he knew why he was sad. However, this sorrow brought with an urge to cry. It caused extreme pain and left him at a loss. Why am I sensing warmth? This warmth feels dear to me, makes me feel as if I'm being protected. Makes me feel as if it's something that I cannot lack in my life, something that I must protect. Where am I? Why does it feel so unfamiliar? Just what timeline does this place belong to in my memories? Why do I feel sad and have the urge to cry? Why am I in such a state of sorrow, as if I've lost the most precious person in my life? Time passed. In this warmth and unfamiliarity that was accompanied by sadness, Su Ming gradually calmed down. He immersed himself in this situation and let time pass, until one day, he gradually began to feel that there was something wrong with his body. In the past, when he circulated his cultivation base over his entire body, he only needed an instant to do so. It didn't take much time. However, now, the speed of the circulation of his cultivation base had reached a state which put him in disbelief. In the past, he could complete a cycle of his cultivation base in an instant, but now, he could complete a dozen-something cycles in that same time. This sort of speed stunned him momentarily, and a myriad of thoughts raced in his head. My level of cultivation did not increase. My cultivation base is still that of Earth cultivation realm. If that's the case, then this isn't because of my level of cultivation, but because of my body. Zhu Kang once mentioned that the world in the stone monument is born from a person's memories, which means that there was a period of time in the past when my cultivation base could reach this circulation speed. Just when was it? It's not before or after I became the god of berserkers. I remember that my body was just an illusion that was gathered together. I couldn't reach this sort of speed back then. There's only one explanation to this. This is my real body. Su Ming's heart trembled. The conclusion he came to through his analysis caused the circulation speed of his cultivation base to become even faster. My real self. Darkness. Could it be that this is the time when I couldn't see light and when my body was surrounded by freezing cold, where only Feier's voice accompanied me? The period of time which is indistinct in my mind? It should be that timeline. My real body is in the land of immortals. It's sealed up and has become something for other people to absorb, but why is there warmth, unfamiliarity, and sadness? Su Ming could not open his eyes. He could not see his surroundings. He was still uncertain about this guess. I chose the eye from the 5 illusory echelons for the divine essence test I received this time. Right now, I can't open my eyes. Then does it mean that this time, the success of my test depends on whether I can open my eyes? Su Ming was no longer the ignorant boy from the past. After receiving the baptism of time and experiencing many things, he had been refined to the point where he possessed a powerful will and wisdom. With a few clues, he could deduce and figure out many things. It doesn't matter whether this is the truth or not, I will have to continue trying to open my eyes. Su Ming wanted to do so, but no matter how hard he tried, he could not achieve it. He could not control his own body, and so his eyes remained closed. He continued trying, and time gradually passed. 1 month, 2 months, 1 year, 2 years. Su Ming lost track of how much time passed. He slowly sensed that the timeline he currently resided in was not the one where he was in the land of immortals, as he had previously guessed. Otherwise, why would he not sense even a single hint of someone absorbing his power? In fact, he had a vague sensation that his body was moving, or more accurately speaking, he was floating. I don't have any memory of this. I don't remember myself floating and being unable to open my eyes like this. Just when had this happened? In silence, time continued to pass, until one day, Su Ming suddenly heard a violent boom. This loud boom immediately made him notice that he could hear. Over the years, this was the first thing he'd heard. In the mid of that booming sound, a loud whistle shot through the air, causing Su Ming to immediately draw a picture in his head. Within that picture was a long arc that was slicing through the air. The whistles that were stirred up crashed into the invisible space, and that booming sound was created. It became louder in Su Ming's ears with each passing moment, seemingly endless. Once it became deafening, his heart trembled. He realized that his theory had been wrong. The thing was not a long arc, but a gigantic longship. That sound means that the longship is traveling at an incredibly fast speed, and this speed is impossible within a cultivation planet. Could it be that this is the galaxy? Su Ming's mind immediately wiped off the previous picture, and he replaced it with a gigantic longship. The background was a galaxy. The longship was charging closer with a piercing sound in its wake, like a sharp sword that sliced through space. This sort of sound was familiar to Su Ming. He remembered that he had heard something like this before. A sword. This is the sound of a sword slicing through space. This is a sword, an ancient bronze sword. It's the sound of a gigantic ancient bronze sword of true sacred yin world when it charges through the galaxy. If Su Ming could breathe at that moment, it would have definitely quickened. The picture in his head had already become complete, and many speculations rose in his mind. In the vast galaxy, a gigantic ancient bronze sword was traveling. Right in front of it, within the endless galaxy, was dust, and in that dust there was a corpse floating about. There is a corpse here. There's no mistaking this. This is the corpse that's been spreading those waves of mighty power. We're lucky today, we actually managed to find a powerful warrior's corpse. An awe-inspiring voice reached Su Ming's ears. It was rather familiar, and Su Ming almost immediately managed to recognize its owner. At that instant, a loud bang rang out in his heart and mind. This is the voice of the spirits of 9 Yin's progenitor. Corpse, ancient bronze sword. This is the time when the spirits of 9 Yin were ordered to look for corpses of powerful warriors and managed to find a baby in the galaxy. That baby is me. The booming sounds in Su Ming's mind were like thunderbolts striking and echoing in the air. His heart trembled, but the next few words that reached his ears caused Su Ming's heart to almost break during that instant. There's not just one corpse, but 2. When the voice that belonged to the spirits of 9 Yin's progenitor reached his ears, several powerful divine senses immediately swept towards him and gathered on his body. There's a baby held in the corpse's arms. It's a pity, but the baby is dead, too. By the looks of it, he hasn't been born for long. This woman should be his mother. Seems like she wanted to protect the child even as she died, hoping to use her body to protect him. It's an instinctive act of not wanting her child to be injured. This woman must have been incredibly powerful when she was alive. Look at her tears, they're frozen on her face. Even those that have fallen on the baby's body are also frozen. Only the tears of powerful existences can possess the power of plain kalpa, gaining the ability to become eternal teardrops. Those teardrops are treasures. If we refine them into enchanted treasures, their might will be incredibly great. All right, separate the two corpses and store them separately. Once we find a few other, we'll be able to go home. A loud bang rang out in Su Ming's heart. This time, that bang could no longer be described as the sound that would be heard when thunder struck the ground. This was the greatest sound Su Ming had heard in his life. The loud bang made him tremble, and it was not his heart that trembled, but his body. He could not describe what he was feeling now. His mind was blank. Only the voice of the spirits of Nine Yin's progenitor continued echoing in his head, and it became increasingly louder. Due to it, Su Ming began shivering even more, until it became a powerful craze that urged him to open his eyes. He understood why he felt warm now. That was because he was in the woman's embrace. He also understood why he had that sense of unfamiliarity. That was because he had never met this woman before, he had never seen her. He, too, understood why he was sad. That sorrow that came from his soul was due to the woman's tears having frozen on his body. Mother! Su Ming's heart was torn. Boundless grief brought extreme pain with it. If he did not learn who this woman was right now, then he would be a failure of a son. He wanted to open his eyes, not for anything else, but to simply catch a glimpse of his mother who had protected him even during the final moments of her life, with tears falling from her eyes even though he was a stillborn. He wanted to open his eyes and see her face, then use his entire life to remember her, protect her in his memories. His body trembled. His heart roared. His soul grieved. All of these things gathered together into a power that shook the sky and earth during that instant, causing Su Ming's body to continuously tremble and gather together the power that would allow him to open his eyes. At that instant, his eyes flew open. He then saw the ancient bronze sword and the spirits of Nine Yin's progenitor along with a few people behind him walking over. He also saw a pair of warm arms holding onto him. Su Ming turned his head around, finally seeing a beautiful woman. Her eyes were closed, as if she was asleep, but there was reluctance to part and an expression of love on her face as well as frozen crystalline teardrops on her cheeks. All of these things etched themselves into Su Ming's mind. His body trembled, and tears fell from his eyes. Boom! Everything before Su Ming's eyes vanished. He wanted to lift up his hands and seize it, but the only thing that he managed to catch was emptiness. There were only endless stone monuments around him. The one that belonged to him let out a booming sound, and at that moment, from 20,000 feet, it shot up to 100,000 feet. 1. Spirits of Nine Yin's progenitor, the one who was a skeleton in the temple in the world of Nine Yin and asked Su Ming for Lai Xianxia's power. He then helped Su Ming and fated kin escape from the world of Nine Yin. Chapter 8:19. Cherishment. Even though the 1,000 feet stone monument stood tall before Su Ming, there was no joy in his heart, much less a hint of emotion that was stirred due to the gigantic size of the stone monument. He sat in front of it with a blank gaze, tears falling soundlessly down his cheeks. There was no expression in his eyes, but if anyone looked closely, they would be able to see a hint of light flickering with sudden flashes of brightness and darkness in his right eye. That light belonged to a runic symbol that was swiftly forming at that moment. If someone extracted that runic symbol from his eye, then anyone who looked at it would sense an ancient presence. It seemed to only exist in the endless passage of time, almost impossible to find in the current day and age. Before Su Ming had fused with the stone monument, that runic symbol did not exist. It instead naturally appeared once he did that, and his stone monument rose to 100,000 feet. As time passed, the runic symbol became clearer in Su Ming's right eye, until it completely replaced his pupil. Right then, if anyone looked at him at that moment, they would definitely be shocked by the sight of his right eye. It seemed as if the changes of the universe's law and the supreme truth that no words could describe were contained within the runic symbol that had replaced the pupil. However, Su Ming paid no attention to all of these, not caring for it one bit. He stared at the stone monument in front of him blankly while tears trailed down his cheeks before falling on his robes, but they could not seep into it. Instead, they trailed down, and eventually, fell on the ground. The sound of tears falling on the ground could only be heard if someone listened with their heart. This sound was soft, and it echoed in Su Ming's heart before turning into warmth, unfamiliarity, and grief. It did not fade away even after a long time had passed. Su Ming had always thought that the baby had floated alone in the galaxy until he was taken away by the spirits of Nine Yin. Yet now, he realized that the truth was quite different. Quite different. He did not float alone in the galaxy in the past, but instead was a child held in his mother's arms. Even though both mother and son had died, her warmth and tears now etched themselves into Su Ming's mind for all eternity. Sharp stabs of pain that intertwined with each other shot up his heart. His face turned pale, and he immersed himself in sensing this pain. His face was filled with anguish as he remembered the scenes within the spirits of Nine Yin's ancient bronze sword. So she was that close to me at that time. Ma. Su Ming mumbled. His eyes gradually filled with red, and a trickle of blood flowed down the corners of his mouth. This was the blood from his heart. It was blood that flowed out of a person's body when their emotions were rife and when great waves of happiness as well or sadness had injured their heart and soul. Those droplets of blood were the symbol of that face that would remain eternally within Su Ming's memories. A crazed ball of fire alighted in his eyes. He clenched his hands tightly into fists. This might be the first time he saw his mother, and that familial love between them might be unfamiliar. But his mother's tears, her action of protecting his infant self before she died, and everything else brought a warmth that Su Ming had never experienced. He remembered the story second senior brother had told him, one that had happened many, many years ago. He recalled a married couple and all the things that had happened to them in true Morning Dao world. This world shall be built for Abyss. Killing intent shone in Su Ming's eyes. His hate towards true Morning Dao world was originally one that could not be resolved, and right then, another great layer was added to that hatred. Su Ming would definitely not rest until he took his revenge. True Morning Dao world. Su Ming sucked in a deep breath and slowly closed his eyes. After a long while, he forced down the emotions in his heart. When he opened his eyes once again, the sadness was hidden in their deep recesses. No one could see it. Only when he was lonely and missed his family would he experience that past grief that was thicker than blood once again. The parental love was greater than anything else in the world. It might come suddenly and be unfamiliar, but once it entered one's soul, how could they forget or cast it aside simply because it was unfamiliar to them? Su Ming sat quietly before his stone monument, looking at it. The monument was no longer an icy cold presence in his eyes, no longer something that forced others to inherit its legacy and killed at random, but had become a path for him to regain his lost memories. Compared to retrieving the lost memories, making this stone monument reach 1,000,000 feet was no longer important. Su Ming looked at it while the time slowly passed around him. He lost track of it soon. Then, a booming sound echoed around him, and 3 huge cracks appeared in the empty air in the distance. 3 people charged out. Once those 3 people appeared, their faces were filled with shock and confusion. At the same time, 3 of the 100,000 stone monuments began shining with an intense light. As that light shone, shrill screams filled with an unwillingness to admit defeat rang out before quickly fading away. The 3 new people had arrived and taken the right of their predecessors. Almost the moment the 3 people appeared, a vortex emerged from the stone monument before Su Ming. An eye protruded out of the vortex, and it met his gaze. Su Ming's body slowly faded away until he completely disappeared, fusing with the stone monument and vanishing without a trace. This time, there was no darkness before Su Ming's eyes. He saw a dim piece of sky, blue waves on the sea, breathed in the air of the land of berserkers, and felt the familiar waves of power. He lowered his head and saw a pretty young woman with a face that was unforgettable. This woman was grabbing onto a big yellow mutt beside her as if she was angry and was scolding it non-stop. That big yellow dog had a look of suffering on its face. Its head drooped down as it simply allowed the woman to hold onto its fur. Occasionally, it would let out a few moans. As Su Ming looked at the woman, a gentle expression gradually appeared on his face. "You Xian," Su Ming whispered. The woman turned her head around and looked at him in surprise. Little dummy Su, what did you say?" "Ah. You actually spoke to me on your own accord? You called my name of your own free will? You." The woman was momentarily stunned, and disbelief appeared on her face. She no longer bothered with the big yellow dog and went up to Su Ming's side, lifting up her hand to touch his forehead. Su Ming's expression was gentle. He did not dodge, but simply allowed the woman to place her hand on his forehead. The woman saw his expression and saw him not evading her actions. Her expression instantly turned strange, and she instinctively took a few steps back with a dubious and disbelieving expression. She remembered how Su Ming had been cold towards her just moments ago, with an expression of impatience as he spoke with her. Yet now, this sort of change had appeared, and it immediately caused her heart to be on guard. It was especially due to Su Ming's gentle expression. The woman was absolutely unused to it. She quickly took a couple more steps back, and when she saw him standing up from his seated position, she quickly spoke up. You know, you shouldn't treat the marriage your second senior brother spoke about seriously. Your expression is really weird, you know. Before Yu Xian could finish speaking, her mouth fell open. She was too stunned to speak, as if her body had been frozen. She looked at Su Ming with a stupid look on her face. This was because the instant he stood up, he took a step forward and appeared right next to her and gave her a hug. Yu Xian was completely dumbfounded by this action. Her heart thumped loudly against her chest. She was too stunned to move. She simply let Su Ming hold on to her, while her mind was completely blank. She was not the only one feeling this. Even the big yellow dog beside her was stunned, unable to grasp what was happening even after a long time had passed. The bald crane that was peeking from not too far away also blinked a couple times, disbelief evident on its face. Yu Xian, thank you. Who are you? She instinctively cried out. She had a feeling that the person in front of her was no longer the person she liked to tease. Su Ming just shook his head, his gaze moving to his second senior brother, who was sitting and meditating not too far away. He also saw Hu Zi, who was snoring on the ground, as well as his eldest senior brother, who had turned into a statue. This was the 9th summit. As he looked at the scenery around him, Su Ming found that he was brought to the place where he had wanted to be previously, the time before Dao Yuan appeared. I can't change what has already happened, but I can change what happens now. Even if it's futile, I will still change it, Su Ming mumbled. He did not know just what exactly the test of the 5 illusory echelon within the stone monument was, but if he could return to the past in his memories, then he wanted things to no longer be like what had truly happened in reality. Su Ming's gaze moved into the distance, a woman dressed in white looking at him quietly. She was Bai Su, and she had a smile on her face as she looked back at him. Su Ming had understood the meaning of that smile in the past, but he had chosen to avoid it. Yet now, when he saw that it again, the memory of him being unable to catch that piece of cloth when Bai Su had died all those years ago resurfaced in his mind. It was almost symbolic. Since he had chosen to avoid, he could not catch her in the end, only able to let that piece of cloth dance in the air as it left into the distance. I'm truly happy to be able to see all of you again. Su Ming hid away his sadness regarding his mother and let happiness into his heart. It wasn't fake either. This was the happiness that came straight from the depths of his heart when he saw his old friends and family once more. There are 2 ways to cherish something in this world. One of them is when a person never places any importance on a certain thing at first. Only once they lose it do they begin to value it more as they think back on it during the endless passage of time. The other is when the person always values a certain thing, and even after losing it, they still persistently care about it. As time passes, this kind of cherishing gathers together and becomes greater, until it reaches an extreme state and turns into nostalgia, making the person treasure the thing even more than they did in the past. Su Ming was the latter. He looked at those familiar faces, at 9th Summit, at his home, at the people in the distance, who chose to stay in the 9th Summit in the past and who spared no pains and chose to self-destruct just to save Su Ming during danger. His smile was incredibly happy and joyful as he looked at all of them. He smiled faintly, even if that smile made Yu Xian skeptical, stunned by Su, and even surprised the yellow dog that was the Abyss Dragon. They simply did not understand. Bang! As Su Ming smiled, a muffled booming came from the distance, followed by the ripples of the rune in this area being torn apart. Su Ming had sensed these ripples in the past, and now, when he sensed them again, he slowly turned his body around. Gradually, his smile faded away. Gradually, a heinous intent of murderousness appeared in his eyes. Dao Yuan, I've waited for you, for an entire cycle of life and death. Not much explanation was required for this sort of hate. Perhaps some people would understand, but it was just as likely that no one would. Chapter 8:20. So simple. Su Ming lifted his foot. The moment the crowd around him was shocked by the booming that came from the rune being torn apart, he took a step forward. With it, Su Ming instantly disappeared. His disappearance did not surprise the people, because in their hearts, he was always the strongest in this place, but the pupils of the Abyss Dragon by the side shrank at that instant in disbelief. It watched the spot where Su Ming had disappeared with a blank look in its eyes. During that instant, it had sensed a powerful presence of world planes. In fact, it even sensed danger. This was a sense of something that could threaten its existence, and this brought disbelief to the Abyss Dragon. Bang! In the distance, Dao Yuan and the 5 Dao slaves stepped through the barrier around the island. The arrogant look on Dao Yuan's face had just appeared, but before the words he had prepared could leave his mouth, the expressions of the 5 Dao slaves around him suddenly changed drastically. Almost at the instant this happened, Su Ming walked out. He had an apathetic look on his face, but the murderous intent in his eyes was monstrous. At the instant he appeared, he charged towards Dao Yuan without any hesitation. A powerful warrior. A powerful world paragon. Damn it, why is there a powerful world paragon here? Protect the young master. The stench of blood on this person is incredibly thick, and his power of world planes is great. This is the bloody aura of someone who has killed numerous people in the same realm. As the expressions of the 5 Dao slaves changed, one of them immediately grabbed Dao Yuan to charge backwards. The other 4 turned into long arcs and rushed towards Su Ming. When they closed in, their cultivation bases erupted at full force, but it was a pity. While they were world paragons in the initial stage of world plane realm, in the land of berserkers, their power of world planes was restricted. The combat prowess they could bring out was capable of pushing Su Ming into the depths of despair in the past, but now, he charged forward and instantly crashed into the 4. A loud bang that shook the world reverberated in the air when Su Ming's right fist landed on Dao Slave 19's body. The man's eyes instantly went wide. His body started shattering inch by inch, and his flesh as well as his blood fell to pieces. When faced with the current Su Ming, he was instantly killed. The destructive power of world planes surged into his shattered body, tore apart his nascent divinity, and wiped away his soul. His body and spirit were destroyed. At the same time, all the divine abilities from the other 3 Dao slaves landed on Su Ming's body, but to their shock, they inflicted absolutely no damage. In fact, their divine abilities did not even manage to make Su Ming slow down for a moment. They could only watch wide-eyed as Dao Slave 19 was instantaneously killed. Forget the fact that you can't even activate your power of world planes. Even if you were capable of doing so, you're just merely in the initial stage of world plane realm. It wouldn't be difficult for me to kill you then, while now, it's as easy as breathing. Su Ming turned around, and monstrous hatred flashed in his eyes. His voice was like a chilling gust of wind that blew past, causing the hearts of the 3 Dao slaves to shudder. In the distance, Dao Slave 51 held onto Dao Yuan as he fled. Shock could be seen on the young lord's face, along with fear. The 3 Dao slaves before Su Ming immediately retreated. His might bring great pressure to them. In fact, when his words fell into their ears, they did not feel a single hint of conceit from him. It was just as he said. Even if they did execute the power of world planes, they still might not be his opponent. They felt this was certainly right based on that murderous aura about him, which made them incredibly apprehensive. This was a bloodthirsty aura that could only be gathered on a single person after he had killed a great number of people. This sort of powerful warrior was not someone they could provoke, but Su Ming's appearance was too sudden, and they did not even know how they had offended him. After all, while they had come with killing intent, they had not damaged even a single patch of grass on this land. At most, they had only torn down the barrier. This must be a misunderstanding. Sir, please do not be angry. We are from Morning Dao sect. This must be a misunderstanding. That's right. We're only passing by this place while protecting our young master. We did not know that you were training here in silence. Please allow us to show our apology in the form of gifts, and we will immediately leave. Sir, You have extraordinary power. You're certainly not some nobody. We have no grudge nor enmity between us. This is just a mission." The three people spoke one after another, Su Ming's strength having terrified them. At that moment, they did not bother to pursue Dao Slave 19's death, because leaving this place was the most important thing. That was why they placed themselves in an incredibly low position and wrapped their fists in their palms to apologize. But before the three people could even finish speaking, laughter thick with forlornness immediately cut their words off. No grudge nor enmity. Su Ming's laughter was incredibly bitter and desolate. There was also a hatred to it that could burn the heavens. The moment he asked his question, he took a step forward. The expressions of the three Dao slaves changed drastically. Knowing that retreating would mean their deaths, their eyes turned bloodshot and they charged towards Su Ming. Bang! 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 No grudge nor enmity? You say that there is no grudge nor enmity between us. Booms came from under Su Ming's feet, and faint golden light swiftly spread out from there to an area of 10,000 feet. Once it was covered by the light, it turned into rolling golden fog. It was Su Ming's power of world planes. At the instant it erupted forth, Dao Slave 21's body fell apart. He had been crushed alive by Su Ming's power of world planes and had collapsed. How could we have no grudge nor enmity between us? As Su Ming's voice echoed in the air, he moved beside Dao Slave 31. With hatred-fueled actions, he pierced through the center of Dao Slave 31's brows with his right index finger and shattered his skull. Su Ming allowed Dao Slave 31's attacks to land on him before his death, completely unperturbed. This is the sacred constellation robe. He has the sacred constellation robe. Before his death, Dao Slave 31 let out a cry that was filled with utmost surprise. These were his last words in this life. The hate between us burns the skies. Su Ming turned around swiftly. Once he killed Dao Slave 31, he looked towards Dao Slave 41, whose expression had changed drastically due to the shock he experienced after he heard Dao Slave 31's words before his death and who was rapidly retreating without any hesitation at that moment. Powerful killing intent appeared in Su Ming's eyes. During that instant, and in a manner that not even he himself noticed, the runic symbol that had been formed not too long ago and had replaced his right pupil shone abruptly in his right eye under his great murderous intent. During that instant, Dao Slave 41, who had been retreating, suddenly shuddered. The image of the runic symbol in Su Ming's right eye was immediately reflected in an inverse manner in Dao Slave 41's right eye. Almost at the moment this happened, Dao Slave 41 let out a shrill scream. As his body trembled, his cultivation base began quickly dispersing, and within an instant, there was not a single shred of power left in him. He had become immortal. At the same time, as if his body could not withstand the flash of power from the runic symbol in Su Ming's eye, it shattered and turned into ashes. Without a sound. After he died, a runic symbol took form in midair, then charged back. It fused with the runic symbol in Su Ming's right eye, which became even clearer and shone even brighter. Su Ming was momentarily stunned, but at that moment, he did not want to investigate the secrets in his eye. Instead, he looked at Dao Slave 51 and Dao Yuan, who were retreating in the distance. Dao Yuan's face was stark pale. When he saw Su Ming looking towards him, he let out a piercing scream. Who are you? Just who are you? You have the sacred constellation robe, but I've never seen you before. Who are you? Almost at the moment Dao Yuan's screams rang out, Dao Slave 51 began trembling beside him. The runic symbol in Su Ming's right eyes had appeared in both his eyes at the same time. There was no racket. Without any sound, Dao Slave 51 lost all his cultivation base as his body shivered, and he instantly shattered, turning into two runic symbols that instantly flew towards Su Ming. Once they fused into his right eye, the runic symbol began flashing viciously, and overlapping images appeared. This was clearly due to three runic symbols having been put on top of each other. You can't kill me. I have the sacred constellation robe. No one can kill me. Dao Yuan began screaming shrilly while shivering. The fear in his heart had reached extreme levels, and as he swung his right hand, the item he had brought out a long time ago began sending out a force that summoned others. The sky began to roar, and ripples spread out, longships appeared. There were numerous people on those longships. Attack! Kill him! Kill him! Dao Yuan screamed, madness evident in his eyes. Yet at the instant those longships and the people on them appeared, Su Ming's lips curled up into a cold sneer. He had been waiting for this moment. Killing those 5 Dao slaves and Dao Yuan alone was not enough to him to vent his rage and hate. He had been waiting for these people to come. He wanted to kill all of them. Boom! Su Ming's power of world planes fully spread out. That faint golden fog immediately expanded to an area of 50,000 feet, turning it into his world. He leaped up and charged into the sky, crashing into the incoming longships. Boom! 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 Endless booms rang out non-stop in the sky. Once the Dao slaves that were world paragons were no longer present, the strongest were just in heaven cultivation realm. In fact, most of the people were just in earth and man cultivation realm. This sort of cultivators could only be slaughtered by Su Ming. The booming continued for about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. The sky was dyed in a shade of blood, and runic symbols appeared in the sky one after another. There were hundreds of them. They circled about, following Su Ming. When he walked down from the sky with the stench of blood around him, they finally surged into his right eye, filling it with strange overlapping shadows that would terrify people. In Dao Yuan's eyes, the blood fog behind Su Ming surged into the sky. As he walked over, it looked as if it had turned into a cloak. At that moment, Su Ming looked as if he was dressed in a cloak formed by the blood-red sky, and with a boundless amount of murderous aura, he was walking towards Dao Yuan. You can't kill me, you cannot kill me, we have no grudge between us. Dao Yuan was filled with fear and despair. As he quickly retreated, Su Ming's right eye suddenly shone, and hundreds of runic symbols appeared at the same time on Dao Yuan's body. Those runic symbols were on various spots of his body, and they were all shining. Dao Yuan's voice fell silent, and his body shattered instantaneously. In fact, even his sacred constellation robe was reduced to ashes due to those flashing runic symbols. The world fell silent instantly, the people on the 9th summit looking at Su Ming with blank gazes, almost suffocating for having forgotten to breathe. Su Ming stood quietly in midair when he suddenly began laughing. However, as he laughed, he turned his head around and looked at the people of the 9th summit around him. He looked at the faces that had died for the 9th summit, and the grief in his eyes rose within him once more. I see, so killing is so simple an act.